how do all these hundreds of organizations, these proliferating organizations, both produce excellent performing art and market it in ways that keep current audiences happy and bring in new people, and do all that in ways that are not just a one-shot effort, but sustainable year after year.
What the main thing is to do is not be stuck in the old ways of saying what we've done is this is the way we've always done it before, but to really make increasing numbers is great, but increasing relevance is critical.
For me, the model that I hope and shoot for at Signature is that you take any single subway car, you pull it out and you pour the people on the table, and you hope that's who you're speaking to and making the work accessible to. And in order to do that, you have to, from our perspective, break down the economic barrier to start with, create enough of an intimate experience that they feel relevant to it, and then tell stories that are relevant to them.
We have this mystique that in many of our art forms is that we have to keep that moment for the live performance, and if people know the magic behind that moment, they no longer will experience it in the same way. Our audiences are changing. They are absolutely hungry to know how the magic, how it's working. How do you do that? It actually engages them more. It makes their experience deeper and more relevant and more meaningful to them. And so we've done a 180-degree turnaround on this idea of mystique. And we've opened up almost every process of what we do because it's a creative process. And that is as meaningful to some of our audience as the performance itself.
We've, just to add to that for a second, we've actually built that into the architecture. In that shared lobby, when we're loading a set in, we're all out. Everything loads through the lobby. Huh. It's open all day long. You'll sit there today, and there's a load-in going in one of the theaters. There's a rehearsal going in. But one of the interesting things I think we did was we made the front door the stage door, so that every single participant in that building, whether you're staff, your artists, your audience, you collide with each other. You have to pass through the same social space.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And that your participation matters. And so for me, that's translated in a scale, a building that's this, full city, New York City block, but it's made up of intimate experiences. The theaters are small, the lobby is expansive, but everyone collects in that lobby. The theater is reflective about that personal connection I'm talking about. I want artists and audience to breathe the same air, and I want them to just viscerally know that. So the intimacy is important. But the lobby is trying to address the why. Why do we go? And to me, the lobby is, and back of house, by the way, is all built around this notion of orchestrated collisions. We are creating multiple invitations for people to collide with one another. And that might mean a digital experience for that generation that's coming up, which is certainly part of all of us now. Where they're intersecting with oversized iPads that go into a deep history of who we are. Or it might be directly across from it, the bookstore, where they pick up a piece of paper and read words on a page. Or it might be at the bar where they're having a glass of wine, or the cafe or soup or something, or just sitting and relaxing. They're all engaging with one another. And if you create the diverse experience on those stages, and all these audiences, which we start all curtain times at the same time, collide in that communal space, then we're creating the potential for each person to realize that they have something to do with this, and they're valued in it, and it's personal for them. You're never in a situation where you can navel gaze. You're never closing in on yourself because you're turning a quarter and colliding with that other artist or that other experience.
American adults, 3/4 of American adults now, we're finding, participate in viewing the arts or listening to art through electronic media.
With technology, we're able to use data to personalize how we reach audience members so that it's not a one-size-fits-all, that we understand the who, what, when, where, and how.
Give me an example of that.
So the notion of what programs does someone consistently come to see? When do they buy their tickets, and how do they get their tickets? What are they interested in? You know, it's a development tool, but I think now with technology, we're able to really look more closely at that. And then the other thing is making sure that the creativity doesn't stop on the stage, but that the creativity exists with the administration, with development, with how we use technology.
So in our organization, we have started to talk about how do we become as nimble as we are on the producing stage, producing art in the work that we do. And I think it's critical for going forward. I really do, because we have to take chances. That's what, using technology, it's changing at such a rapid rate that if we stay with what we know, we will always be behind.
When I think about dancers, I mean, we use every limb that we have in order to reach the audience. And so if you think of the technology as another limb and you humanize it, I think that's important. I mean, it's important to get butts in the seat, but to make them understand why they're important, not just why we're important.
We were encouraged to use not only the statistical survey type of research, but behavioral research. We did a lot of observation, and we took that observation and those notes and we codified with researchers to teach us how to do that. And that has actually moved the needle much more strongly than what people say. We've been really focusing to pay attention of what people do. It's different. We just did an open house where we had monitors in every room that were spending, how much time was someone spending with a certain activity? When were people getting bored? When were we engaging them? When were we not? And actually taking that and having it in a systemized form so that we can actually get better and pay attention when we're engaging audiences. We also did the survey, and they'll tell us when they thought they were engaged, and we'll compare it to the behavioral notes and see if it's the same. Our experience so far is that the behavioral research has been much more accurate to predict what people are going to do than what people think they're going to do.
Saying people that can only afford $25 can come to the theater for a night. That has obviously brought in new audiences. That has effectively lowered that barrier. For your bottom line generally, has that worked out okay?
Well, here's the interesting thing about it. First of all, to talk about pre-ticket initiative, and I think generally what a lot of us confront when we either take our family or a partner or something to an event, and it's costing us, a lot of money in New York, for a family of four to go to the theater on Broadway, that's, after dinner and parking and, you're talking about close to $1,000 for that moment. So people are subconsciously, I think, sitting there and thinking this better be good. We inserted this principle of the ticket initiative, which was an organic outgrowth of all these other things I talked about, was that it turned into, I got in. So the seats were filled and people were sitting there in an intimate setting, knowing that their participation was honored, knowing that they had an access point, and feeling a sense of exploration. But what's been very interesting is the person who's sitting in the chair next to the person who maybe couldn't afford it before is giving back because they like that it's democratized. They like that it's a human experience. They like that it's accessible, and that ultimately they want to pay that forward. And so when we reach out and ask, and speaking of data, we did an enormous amount of data on this. We've been doing this initiative now for 9 years. We've surveyed, we've had outside resources come in. During those rough years that you were just talking about, across the country, primarily, in all areas of fundraising, in terms of individual, corporate, foundation and government and institutional giving, were either flatlined or below the line during that 5-year period. And these are statistics that are drawn from, in our case, the Theater Communications Group. In our time, we expanded anywhere from 40 to 60% in all of those categories. And that's because, I think, of the initiative.